Wow, 2020, are you kidding me? I don't know about you, but yeah, when I was growing up, the year 2000 was the future. The year 2020 was definitely the future. What do you think? Are we in the future yet or not? Howdy folks, welcome back to the channel. I just want to walk through a few things for you that I was expecting to see in the future and I'm hoping to see in 2020. Before we dive into that list there, I just want to say hello and thank you for tuning in and checking out the video. If you're new to the channel, my name's Matt. I'm a professional photographer based here on the Canadian prairies in Battleford, Saskatchewan. I'm a Nikon professional with access to their full range of lenses for gear reviews and all sorts of stuff like that. I also do writing from our friend Dan over at his website shuttermuse.com, where I've launched a series of interviews with leading photographers from around the world. So if photography equipment, camera gear, and photography related conversation are your sort of thing, I would love it if you consider hitting a like on this video, hitting subscribe, and tapping that bell too to get notified for the next time I release a video. But right now, today, let's take a look. I've got my list of 2020 items that I'm really hoping to see that, yeah, the rumors may or may not turn out to be true. But yeah, these are things that I would really love and expect to see in 2020 that I think would make a difference for the type of photography that I do. So let's get at it. I'm looking at the Nikon Z mount or Z mount in Canada A, and that's the 7200 f2.8 S-line lens. That was supposed to be out in 2019 already by Nikon's original their lens roadmap for the Z mount. And yeah, that's just a lens that I think, you know, lots of professionals have and rely on. It's kind of one of the holy trinity of lenses, whether you're in the Nikon land or Canon land. And I think it's overdue for Nikon to have that one out there for, you know, just as an indicator that the Z mount world has fully matured and professionals can rely on it for their day-to-day work. For me, that 7200 as a wildlife shooter, as a landscape shooter, is just so flexible and indispensable. And for me anyways, that's one of the few lenses, or one of the few telephoto lenses anyways, that I've got with a really nice f2.8 aperture, at least in the f-mount world. I've got that lens right now. And I have the FTZ f-mount to Z-mount adapter to let me use that on my Z6. But at the same time, I know there's always a trade-off when you're using that adapter. The focus speed is not always going to be the same. There could be some optical compromises as well too. So you better believe, I'm sure that the native Z-mount 7200 f2.8 will be fully optimized for that larger flange. Although I don't know if you'd seen pictures out there, and maybe I'll bring some up on the screen too, but it looks like that Z-mount 7200 f2.8 is not particularly tiny. And I think, you know, we might have been hoping it would be super compact, but it looks like right now they haven't been able to, you know, overcome some of those basic rules of physics there, where with a large maximum aperture on a lens, it's going to kind of be unavoidably have a certain number of elements, so be a certain length, and also be a certain amount of width as well too. So it looks like it's not going to be a complete miracle, but I'd be looking forward to that because it's going to signal that people who made the leap into the mirrorless world have done so and made the right decision. That's certainly the way I think the world is going for photography, and Nikon could back that up and reassure us by getting more of their professional lenses out there. Next up, also looking at the Nikon mirrorless roadmap there, I've got my eye on the 100 to 400 millimeter, and it's saying that this one is an S-line lens as well too. So in the Nikon mirrorless world, that S-line is kind of their designation for the Pro or the gold ring that's on a lot of the professional grade f-mount lenses. Curiously, that 100 to 400 does not have a maximum aperture listed yet on any of the roadmaps that I've seen anyways. So I guess it remains to be seen. And you know, what a difference, you know, one stop would make. If that ends up being a 100-400 f4, that's probably going to be a pretty big and pretty hefty price tag on that lens too. But if it's an f5.6, I'm sure that would be, you know, it could be something that Nikon's able to deliver at a screaming bargain, kind of like the 200 to 500 was. at f5.6. But at the same time, yeah, I would love to have a 100-400 f4. I just don't know if they can pull a miracle off and have that be anywhere affordable. For example, the Nikon 180-400 with the built-in 1.4 teleconverter in the f-mount world. For us in Canada here anyways, that's over a $10,000 lens. You know, that's the price of a decent car. That's, you know, a lot of photo shoots you'd have to complete to make that pay for itself. You know, sometimes you got to invest to have the right tools, but for me, a lens north of 10,000 is kind of something that's a little bit hard to justify. I'd likely end up borrowing that or renting that, but I would love to see that 100-400 come out and what sort of a statement that Nikon can make with a telephoto or super telephoto zoom in their mirrorless world. Definitely on the radar for 2020. Fingers crossed. Let's get some details soon, please, and thank you. Next up, another entry from Nikon and another entry in the mirrorless world. If we just flash back for a second, imagine where you were when you heard that announcement of the Z mount, Z mount world, the Z6 and Z7. A lot of folks were up in arms, you know, comment wars ensued everywhere, flame wars. How come there were no dual card slots? And how come the battery grip doesn't have all the functions on it? It's just a kind of a dummy battery grip. And this can't be a professional camera. You know, and I know on a lot of levels, the Z or Z7 is a mirrorless D850 in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it really does feel that, you know, despite the spec sheet on the sensor and despite the price tag, there isn't really a pro equivalent or fully pro body in the mirrorless world for Nikon. So where's the mirrorless, you know, D5 or D6 that's going to be coming out this year? A lot of different ways that could end up going, and just looking at a site here, again, maybe I'll share that with you, but there's some speculation that the pro body mirrorless from Nikon could either go hyper megapixels on one hand, or it could be the sports shooter high frame rate, and that's the way I'd be leaning as a wildlife shooter. I would love to have kind of that high frame rate, somewhat lower megapixel count. You keep the great high ISO performance, you keep the high frame rate, you keep the manageable buffer, you save on hard drive space, you save on cards. That whole pipeline is just much quicker and much easier to manage with a somewhat lower megapixel camera. Now even my Z6 here at 24 point whatever megapixels, for me anyways, that's 90 some odd % of the time, that's more than enough for me. Would I love to see 30 something megapixels? Yes. But 40, 50, 60 they're talking about here, potentially? Yeah, no thanks. I'm good for that. If I really want to get extra, you know, megapixels from a crazy landscape shot, I would end up, you know, stitching or compositing and getting, you know, maybe multiple vertical shots and putting those together. There's a lot of different ways to get, you know, ultra high megapixel images. And I really just don't need a camera body that's delivering 60 something megapixels at a time. No thank you. Yeah, my hard drive, my computer, everything would be screening. So that's really it for me. I just know that that's kind of been something at the back of a lot of Nikon shooters' mind, is where's that pro body? And it sounds like in the mirrorless world we are going to finally get that in 2020. So let's see. Let's find out what's going to happen. That's it for my Nikons on my list. Next up, what have I got? If you saw my 2019 favorite gear, you definitely would have seen the Mavic 2 Pro that I just love, and that's doing well for me. And I definitely, you know, am a believer that, you know, you don't fix what's not broken, or, you know, if something's working for you, there's no need to just replace it by default. But at the same time, I've kind of bounced around. I've had the Phantom 4 Pro before. I had the original Mavic Pro. And right now, that Mavic 2 Pro is the sweet spot. It's kind of got the sensor from the Phantom 4 Pro. But I think 2020 might hold out and might bring some other revolutions in aerial, drone, or UAV photography. And the Phantom 5 I know has been something that's been on the radar. It's been on again, off again. But for me, that Phantom 5 would be something that would make me consider it as maybe a second drone, or maybe I would consider getting rid of the Mavic 2 Pro in favor of the Phantom 5, and the reason I would do that would be interchangeable lenses. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I don't know how realistic that is, but that would be the sort of game changer for aerial photography that I think, frankly, is overdue. If you look at, so many drone shots now, they're, increasing battery life, increasing all kinds of functions and features and tracking and GPS stuff, and that's great. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you still have basically an action camera up in the sky. It's a GoPro. Everything is kind of this ultra wide to wide angle field of view. Having interchangeable lenses on something like the Phantom 5, which I think would have enough, lift power to really carry a more substantial lens system. And obviously that would, have things like you'd have to have a lens mount and you're adding weight. Right now, though, for example, I mean, just, the image quality has progressed and I'm seeing, better stuff in terms of the sensors. But for example, that Mavic 2 Pro, it's got a famous collaboration with Hasselblad that happened on that drone. But honestly, I really don't see what the heck that's all about besides having the name or the word Hasselblad there. It's plastic lens elements throughout there, and that's obviously there to save weight, and you have to make some of those compromises. But at the same time, you're losing that optical quality, and I think. And again, there's a reason why drones like the Inspire and the Matrice and these other ones are still out there, because for people that can afford it, like a film production, you're not going to be shooting this tiny little thing. You want to have your proper optics and proper sensors and whatever up in the sky, and you can't fight physics. You need a larger drone body to be able to carry something like that up there. So yeah, I would just love to see something where you can get like, not the ultra wide, but maybe like a 35 or maybe a 50 mil equivalent up in the air. And that would really just change your composition, your cropping for stills and for video too. That would just have such a different look. Whereas right now everything is kind of like a GoPro up in the sky. So yeah, that's definitely not a must-have or a need to have by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a wish list, right? I would love to have that, and that would really change some of my creative possibilities for 2020. And that, believe it or not, is the end of my photography gear, the camera gear itself, but I do have a couple other items on the list here. And first up, I've got the actual MacBook Pro 16-inch. Now, I did order, and I do have a relatively new MacBook Pro 15-inch 2019, and why on earth would I want to replace that so quickly? I typically have been somebody that's kind of gone maybe 5 to 6 years, pretty long time for somebody who uses a computer, every day and relies on it for their profession and their income. But the 16-inch MacBook Pro really does seem to present a couple of tangible benefits over the 15-inch. It's got just that much bigger monitor without actually increasing the chassis size that much more. They just got these really tiny little bezels on the side. Improved battery life, I believe that's the case. It's got dramatically improved graphics card situation and heat management. And these are all issues that I'm facing, and I actually have an active support claim in with Apple, and I've kind of been going back and forth with them on that for months now, and I just was never able to get the proper battery life that I would expect to get out of, or that they were advertising for my 15-inch MacBook Pro. Not happy with that at all. Other than that, it's working great. I mean, I love to edit videos on that, but it just seems that it's not delivering what it should be delivering. And I'm not sure how that support claim or support ticket with them is going to pan out, whether there'll be an opportunity or not to upgrade, or if I'm going to end up selling that and picking up a 6-inch MacBook Pro. Right now, it seems like that would really just be a laptop that I would be able to go back to my 5 or 6 year cycle, something like that, and be able to lean on that. And I'm particularly excited about the graphics card performance because I'm shooting more and more video like this for YouTube, whether I'm shooting that for stuff like this on social media, whether I'm shooting that for clients, I'm doing aerial videos. I just need a computer that can really handle that. And it looks like the 16-inch MacBook Pro has really stepped up the game in that regard. And what that would let me do is, I don't know if you can tell, but this is an iMac there too. That would let me go back to having the MacBook Pro as a primary computer and then have an external monitor and really just kind of have that one computer. So right now I have a little bit of an older iMac plus the laptop. It's kind of a hybrid system, but having those two computers that you're working off of creates some issues, like with your Lightroom libraries and all kinds of fun stuff like that, that you just wouldn't have to worry about if it really was just your one computer as your MacBook Pro plus external monitors. You just have to, you know, dock it and go. So that's on the 2020 list. Definitely, again, far from a need to have it, but oh my goodness, I would love to have that, and it would really make a big difference for my workflow personally, especially with some of the frustrations I've been having with the 15-inch, including some sticking keys now. So yeah, goodbye 2019, goodbye 15-inch MacBook Pro. Please come on, 2016, or 16-inch 2019. Yeah. Now that's it for the camera equipment, the cameras, the hardware, and I just have one final thing on my list for 2020, and you might not be expecting it, and it's something that's pretty kind of low tech, but my better half definitely spoiled me for Christmas time there, and I got a new Lenscoat LensHide. And as a wildlife photographer or somebody that's really trying to tell conservation-oriented stories with their photography, that's been something that, if I'm to be honest, I've been pretty lazy with over the last few years for sure. And a LensHide, I'll put up a picture on the screen here too. What that lets you do is it not only, you know, covers your lens like a lens coat does. We're familiar with that neoprene coating that you can throw on a lens, but this covers your lens and it lets you get under there too. So it's a hyper portable kind of a blind or a shelter that you can go and shoot wildlife from. Now, I think there are a couple benefits there, and I really want to see in 2020 how this could change or shift my wildlife photography. First of all, getting closer and getting better shots of the wildlife, letting them get comfortable with you and get close to you and maybe not even know you're there. And the other benefit too, as somebody who's trying to be conservation oriented, and I think a lot of us, if we're wildlife lovers, you know, you don't always want to be out there and disturbing wildlife or getting in their space and disrupting them or making noise, distressing them, especially around, you know, springtime when you've got breeding season happening or whatever with you know, birds and different species. So yeah, I think that Lenscoat LensHide could be something that lets me be a little bit less obtrusive when I'm chasing wildlife too, and you know, just practice that you know, getting in one space and staking out an area and getting into that zen and being at one with the nature and wilderness around you and letting the wildlife come to you and being in that one space for a longer time. So that's something that would really shift the style of photography that I do, and I'm curious how that might affect the images that I end up getting too. So that's it for my 2020 wish list. I don't know, some things, you know, may or may not come true there. Nikon may or may not be delayed. The Phantom 5 may or may not come true. But yeah, these are things that would really make things a lot, you know, really change things up for me, make life a lot easier perhaps. And yeah, so that's it for that list. Why don't you let me know in the comments there too if I missed anything, if you're like, oh my god, man, how could you forget this lens? Or how come you're not talking about Sony's or whatever? Well, let me know in the comments there. I would love to know what you're looking forward to for 2020. And if I can find a way through my contacts at Nikon Canada or my work at Shuttermuse to get my hands on that gear, I would love to find a way to do a review for you and let you know if that gear is worth your time and money. Let's see. So again, yeah, if you're new to the channel, my name is Matt, professional photographer here on the Canadian prairies. If you love talking gear, if you like reviews, if you love getting inspired by amazing photographers, you're at the right place. And yeah, great to meet you. Thank you for checking this out. I'd love it if you think about hitting the like button, hit subscribe, and tap that bell too so you get notified of my next video. And with that, here we are. It's the future. Hope you're having a good one, and all the best for you and your future photography endeavors for 2020. We'll see you on the flip side.